Okay, we are live. So welcome everyone to this Asian Intelligence episode. We're exploring everything agent. We're actually like diving deep into kind of like ecosystem leader thought and debates around kind of like technical architecture debates and just a very high level conversation around how the agent ecosystem works. We're speaking about framework. We're speaking about AI specific. I'm Francesco. I'm contributing to MotherDAO. I'm also like leading developer relation at Consensus. And today we're diving deep into kind of like the agent and the ITHO of Devansh. Thanks so much for joining. It's an honor to have you here. You want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Happy to do that. So my name is Devansh, and I'm a journalist by training. I kind of got into the full AI field with the interest of using AI to quantify impact. That how are we able to kind of measure how impactful one thing is relative to another with AI? And after I tweeted this out, Vitalik got in touch saying that, hey, I've been looking at something similar. And he kind of laid out the entire mechanism that became deep funding. So I guess the lesson for this is that you should try tweeting out whatever you're working on.
Actually, this is good because a lot of kind of like agent builders and builders in general, are hearing us, and in general, it's great. Also, kind of like the history, how you've been working around the funding specifically. Or I think like, and it was the same kind of experience for me, right? Because I was actually like learning about the funding. We also like chat with a walkie since like I think 2 Denver ago. I started to actually like understand how is this kind of like how we are getting from kind of retroactive funding to a much more specific kind of mechanism. And then is how I actually like saw your specific kind of like contributions here, and they said, oh shit, like we need to actually like speak. So quickly give us a little bit like the history, how you got into kind of like this defunding mechanism, like a little bit like how was the story
Mm.
to this point
Yeah,
here.
sure. So kind of when I brought up like the idea of like using AI to quantify impact, it was like
Mhm,
for outcome based funding that we have some past outcome,
mhm,
which is kind of what retroactive funding is. It's based on past outcomes.
mhm,
So how are we able to see which outcome is worth more than another? And is it possible to use AI for that? And kind of the core insight which Vitalik had, which kind of helped me move in my own thinking, was that we don't want one AI to be this monolithic AI which is deciding what something is worth. We want many AIs to make their prediction, and we choose between the AIs, and we have some system for choosing between them. So that was kind of a big
mhm,
unlock for me mentally, from like wanting to build my own AI, which would quantify impact well, towards creating a competition or a contest where different AI submitted are making their predictions, and then we can choose between the winning AI, that which is the winning AI. So this was like a big mental unblock that kind of helped me move in my thinking of how we should do this. And then the question becomes, how do you actually select what are the good AI and what are the
mhm,
bad AI? Because the biggest danger with like creating this like one monolithic AI is like this AI
mhm.
overlord who we hope will treat us well, is that you're kind of trusting
Yeah,
that this AI is actually designed well. And we don't want to have that trust, right? We want to kind of have some accountability for the AI, where
exactly.
if you snooze, you lose. Like if you are not kind of keeping up with the latest and the best models and trends, like you will not be
Yes.
chosen, and you will kind of fall behind in the pack. And that's something important, I think, for a lot of people building these agents. Yeah.
I agree. I agree. I mean, that was also the kind of the reason why Mother started to exist because we actually say we don't want to reproduce something like DeFi Summer was the people forking things, right? Especially on the agent side, but we want to actually like start to be on even lower than the framework level and building social reputations, full open attestation that actually like build reputation for agents because mostly trusted AI are based on kind of like, and that's kind of the beauty on building a Web3 rail. And I just want to ask you a little bit, like going higher level, like now, like all the AI agent kind of like storm like is happening. You probably saw since the start all the framework side. What are the trends? Are you happy on how the this kind of like framework development road is kind of like developing. What's your take around these key trends?
Um, yeah, like around the trends around how the frameworks are developing. So I think kind of the
Mhm.
first wave of AI agents that we saw were basically Twitter reply guys. They would reply to you on Twitter, and
Yes.
the movement seems to now be towards useful AI, that AI which actually lets you
Mhm.
do useful things. So kind of some of the
Yes.
I'll talk about like the three types of agents that I'm trying to get the ecosystem to work
Nice.
on and build.
For the deep funding specifically,
Like I think the
or
broader category is distilled human judgment. So deep funding is like one
Mhm.
example where we want agents
Mhm.
that can look at a code base and at different projects and assign weightage of how important those projects are. So basically you can like one type of
Mm.
agent which we've had three competitions on is AI agents that predict how much funding a project should get, to kind of
Mhm.
simplify it. So that's
Mhm.
one type of agent. A second type of agent is agents which predict the Sibylness of a wallet. Is a wallet a Sibyl or is it a human? We want agents to be able to predict that as well. And the third type of agent we want is agents that predict the misinformation on a post. Like, is a post going to get community noted? Is a tweet
Mm.
factually accurate or is it inaccurate? That's kind of the third type of agent that we hope the ecosystem starts working on and building. Um, so kind of what is our approach in these kind of ways to get the community activated? Our approach is basically setting up machine learning competitions. So like to
Mhm.
give an example of the Sybil one, I'll give example in each of the categories. uh, the first category of like predicting how much funding an AI agent gets. So how much funding a project gets. The first competition we held was AI trying to say how much past funding a project has received. So we had like a large data set of how much funding a project had got in the past, and AI had to
Mhm.
predict how much funding those projects would get. So this kind of relied on an
Mm.
honor system because this code was public. So we said, don't try to overfit your model. We're going to judge you on the basis of the submission of your model. What are the parameters you would look at?
Mm.
And we got 21 high quality model submissions, which kind of looked at the README files, which looked at the code, and then it predicted how much funding those projects would get. The feedback we got from the community was that we don't want it to
Mhm.
be on juror judgment or juror bias. We want a pure leaderboard competition. So that led to our second
Mm.
competition, which is um, we held a competition where people submit AI models to predict how much funding a project gets in GG23 before the round even begins. So before the round begins,
Mm.
AI predicts how much funding a project is going to get. Then just as the round starts, we stop submissions, let the round continue, and then we kind of see which model actually best predicted how much funding would be got in the round. So this is the second one, and then the third is deep funding, which we'll talk about in a bit. So that's one category of agents which kind of try to
Mhm.
predict how important a project is, how much funding it should get, all of that stuff. The second category is Sibylness, where the broad idea is that humans are good at making a few decisions, whereas AI can make a
Mhm.
lot of decisions. So, how can we use the few decisions which humans make to select the best or most aligned AI to make a lot of decisions?
Mhm.
So, we partnered with the Gitcoin Passport team and with DApp Radar, which have
Nice.
a lot of
Mhm.
past data sets on which wallets are human. And the crucial part is that these data sets are private, they are not public. So we keep this data set private in order to, and people submit AI models predicting is this wallet a Sybil or not. And we ideally do this for all 362 million wallets on Ethereum's L1, L2. Um, and we use the 10,000 wallets which are manually labeled to rank the AI, which makes its judgment across all the wallets on Ethereum. So since AI doesn't
Mhm.
know which wallets we have answers to and which we don't have answers to, they have to give a good judgment on all of the questions that we ask them. So that's kind of the broad idea
Mm.
of like what Vitalik calls distilled human judgment, that humans give a
Mhm.
few answers, AI gives a lot of answers, and we use the few answers
Yes.
of humans to select the AI, which then gives a lot of answers. Um, so that's the second category.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
And the third and final category is kind of the main, like we've been talking to the X team, and a problem that they
Yes.
faced is that community nodes takes about 5 hours before a post gets community noted. And that's way too long. That, like, a tweet has a life of 8 hours, and if in 5 hours is getting a community note, like half the world has seen it already. um,
Yes.
so, kind of something we're exploring is a competition where AI predicts, or it puts some money and it makes a prediction whether a post will be community noted or not. And then after 2 days, we resolve the market. It either got a community note or it didn't. And based on that, the winning AI, which predicted correctly, gets the money from the losing AI. So, creating a competition where the market resolves based on community notes happening on a tweet, that's kind of the third one that we are interested in eventually doing. So yeah, these are the three categories broadly.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, that's super specific, and I really like it. And I just was in the meantime also like I was checking out because the first time I actually was discovered you like through the GitHub repo deep funding, right? I want to quickly like share just does this part, and then I can tell people also like the journey here is was mostly like let me just here. So on the defunding side, and then I discovered like this part that was super interesting. Also like how to actually like scale through human judging and judgment, especially because you want to kind of like attest and have this kind of like human centric side. I don't know if you want to kind of like deep dive a little bit here, or I know you wanted to kind of like screen share a little bit because I find that the especially the tree. I don't remember where I saw it, but there was actually like a builder kind of like defunding map where VM, for example, VM that was literally like like laying down the foundation for especially some of the strongest Web3 frameworks, especially even in some of the most useful SDK out there, was like was maintained by two, three like like people, and that was crazy. Like I don't remember where I found it. Maybe you have this graph because it's probably one of the strongest way. But please, like let me know, like because I think we should definitely need to kind of like deep dive in this
Mm,
concept because I think sometimes people want to speak about deep funding, but they're not understanding exactly what it's all about. Is not just a retroactive funding, but it's actually a much stronger social reputation mechanism for attributing
right.
funding.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a good start of like explaining it in as simple and clear a way as possible. So, deep funding has three parts to it. The first is a dependency graph. So, I think the broader idea is moving away from the framing of public goods, which is trying to answer the question how valuable is something for the world, which is very hard to get an answer to, and instead trying to answer a very specific question like how valuable is solidity for Ethereum, which is somewhat easier than how valuable is solidity for the world, which is much harder to answer. So that's the first part, like a dependency graph where you have something like Ethereum, and then you look at all of the things which make up Ethereum. So I'll maybe share my screen here. This will make it much
Please, yes,
easier.
yes.
Um,
And one thing that it popped to my mind right now is the cosmograph around contribution mechanism. That was amazing, and I think people here like need to kind of like find
yep.
it out. But let's
Yeah.
get to your point first
Yep.
here.
So yeah, so this is like the entire.
Oh, you have it
Yes, so
already.
this is the entire cost. This is the entire set of repos that like make Ethereum what it is. This includes consensus clients, execution clients, and dev tooling clients. So it's not like reaching the wallet layer or the application layer. It's just like the core infra. And we can see there are like, and we've also included the dependencies of those repos. So we have 34 core seed nodes. So the ones like Solidity, account abstraction, Remix, Paradigms, Reth. And we also have all of the dependencies of these repos. So things like add chain or norm or crypto
Wow.
begin. And kind of in this is an unweighted graph. So all of these lines are equal. And kind of in one sentence, if I have to explain deep funding, it's basically trying to get a weight to these lines. How thick should these lines be? And if we can figure out a good way to get the weight of these lines, and there are 10,000 of these lines, so it's not possible to do them manually, then we can just put money into one public key and it gets distributed to all of these different repos in one shot. So it actually makes it like super easy to solve what I call the credit assignment problem. So public goods in general has two problems. One is the credit assignment problem, which is how valuable is something and how much money should it get, which is very hard to solve
Hmm.
without like people fighting. And the second problem to solve is the funding loop problem. That how are you getting reliable recurring revenue, which you can then distribute based on the credit that's been assigned. Something like Bitcoin is a good example of it, where the credit assignment problem is whoever manages to mine the next block, they get the credit. And the
Yes.
funding loop is that they get fixed BTC rewards for it. So that's kind of an example of credit assignment and funding loop. So deep funding is only trying to solve the credit assignment problem. We are not trying to solve the funding loop problem. We're just trying to say how valuable
Yes.
are each of these projects and repos. So this is one part of it, the
Ah,
dependency graph and giving weights to the lines over here. So how do we give weights to the lines? That's kind of the next logical question to
exactly.
ask.
And where the AI, exactly, where the AI play in this
Yes,
role.
so
Yes.
this is where we have an open competition. So this is kind of the deep funding contest, which is live currently. So please, all of you model builders on this live stream,
Oh
we
yeah.
need you to kind of look into this challenge and try submitting your predictions about how much weight these lines have. So here you can see there are like 5,000 dependencies, around 14 or 15,000 edges in the graph because some dependencies are used in multiple places. And here we have a leaderboard. So David Gasquez has submitted his model and he's currently the winner in this contest. And then we have different people who've all submitted and they place on the leaderboard. So all of these people have built AI or metrics models which predict how thick these lines should be. So then our kind of challenge becomes much easier, which is how do we select from amongst these winning models? How do we know who is number one, who is number two, who is number three? And that's kind of where we have spot checking, that we have jurors come and rate a subset of these repos. So a juror might come and say, for Aragon, is testify more important or is map structure more important? And there are 10,000 of these, but we only get answers to 500 of them. And based on the
Mhm.
500 that we do have, we rank the AI model based on how well it's able to predict the judgment of the jurors. So it creates that accountability, that like you can't just submit random AI models. It has to be aligned with the human juror judgments. And that's what creates the accountability layer and differentiating from the good AI agents and the bad ones. Um,
Mhm.
so that's the final part of it. So the first part is a dependency graph, which is what this is. The second part is giving weights to the lines, which is basically what this competition is. And the third part is kind of getting juror judgments for a subset of these lines, which is the kind of labor intensive part of it, which is judges to come and give their judgments on it. I think kind of I'll stop over here, but like the larger point is that we want judges to focus on quality rather than quantity. So if I tell a judge to
Yes.
vote on 600 projects, like no one likes doing that. But if I ask them to just make five careful decisions, like people are able to do that
Mhm.
much easier. So that's kind of what deep funding is trying to do. Like let jurors focus on quality rather than quantity. Don't try to rate all of
Agree.
these,
Yeah.
just try to rate a few. And we are going to use your few
Yes.
judgments to choose the winning AI that then gives to everybody. So um,
So question that asking. So I'm just trying to bring some questions here that I think are relevant. But Katerina here is asking, like, why do you want to make funding dependent to direct relationship? Are this relationship dependency directed? What you answer to that? Like, it's definitely relevant.
Yeah, so I think the dyadic part I think comes in the pairwise component. That is this more important or that, and it's kind of like the interface of dating apps, right? Where it's like super easy and it's not very taxing cognitively because I can just swipe right, swipe
Mhm.
left. So I guess we want to try replicating that flow for the jurors. That it's like, do you think this is more important or that? That being said, when we actually tried, like we have collected over 600 data points from jurors already. So some of the jurors said we actually don't want to make pairwise comparisons. What we would rather do is that you give us a list of dependencies and we'll give a rating of each dependency. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a dyadic relationship. It so happens that like many jurors prefer that because similar to dating apps, it's kind of easy to just compare repos. But some jurors have just said give us a list of repos and we'll give you a judgment next to it, like on a scale, on like on a kind of on a grade of 10, how much is this repo being rated on 10? So that's the other mechanism that we saw. But that's a great question to ask. On the second part,
Nice.
are these directed? So the directed part comes in, which is actually the slight nuance of deep funding, which is there are three layers to it. So the first layer is the seed nodes, which make up Ethereum. So there the judges are asking, is Prism more important or is Lighthouse more important for Ethereum? Because these are the level one seed nodes. Uh, the second level is asking how much credit belongs to Prism and how much credit belongs to the dependencies of Prism. So if you look at something like a Brave browser, it's a fork of
Hmm.
Chromium. So Chromium deserves more credit than Brave browser. So that's the second level that we ask, like how much should remain with the seed node and how much should be with the dependencies. And then the third level is basically if we ask like, is ETH account or is ETH ABI more important for Web3 Pi? So is Web3 Pi or Solidity more important for Ethereum is level one. How much credit belongs
Hmm.
to Web3 Pi versus its dependencies is level two. And is ETH account or ETH ABI more important for Web3 Pi is level three. So that's basically the three levels of the contest that we're asking people to submit. So, and that's where the relationships are directed.
Nice, nice. I mean, that's a super like deep answer. I mean, that's very interesting, and I think it's also relevant. I think like you show different. You show that the dependency graph. You kind of like answered, how deeply the funding kind of like mechanism is working. So, what are the things like how AI is playing in this role in shaping? Also, like I assume also the mechanism will be getting more complex. But how is kind of like the could be even the agent side, like or even the framework side, because we need to get also like Web2 developer involved in this somehow, right? I'm wondering what's your opinion on these kind of like topics.
Yeah, I mean, at least my approach for how we get AI people interested in crypto is by creating these fun competitions. So, over the weekend, like
Hmm.
build a model and submit it for the deep funding contest. And if you win, you get like prize
Hmm.
money from Vitalik. And you also get to
Hmm.
like use your AI to distribute capital to open source repos, which is like also super impactful.
Mm,
And that's how we hope. So I
great.
overall I see like three groups that we're targeting for these competitions. So one group is the crypto AI group, which we've been able to reach fairly effectively, not as well as we want, and these podcasts are super useful to reach that group. The second group is
Yes.
academics, so people who work in universities, PhD students, they find it cool to submit in these challenges. And then the third group is the regular AI people, so like industry AI people, and that's like we found it the hardest to
Hmm.
reach them. So so this is our
Hmm.
strategy right now, create these really fun things to do
Hmm.
with AI on Ethereum, these fun and useful
Makes
things,
sense.
and then kind of start giving them a very concrete ask,
Yes.
that yeah, over the weekend please build a model and submit it in deep funding, please build a model and
Oh yeah.
predict the civil-ness of wallets. That's kind of our approach.
Nice. Any kind of like specific wish list of submissions that you wish people start building? Like exactly what you're like. I wonder. Let's dive deep into some specific use case that you would like to see agent and builders, because like a lot of people are hearing us right
Right.
now.
So I'll maybe quickly share my screen again.
Oh
And
yes, please.
yeah, so basically, the last thing we want, like, the kind of main end output is something like this,
Oh, this
where
is good.
you have
Yeah.
this is all just based on GitHub stars, so don't take any of these weights
Hmm.
seriously. But this is kind of eventually
Hmm.
what we want. We want AI models which tell us that, like, okay, remix 15%, go Ethereum 13%, Lodestar 4%. So we have these like different weights, and that allows us to just
Yes.
give money into one public key and it gets distributed. So that's kind of the larger thing that we want. And this is an example, a really cool one of like a dependency graph
Oh,
of
nice.
Ethereum's ideological dependencies. So Ethereum is based 20% on Bitcoin's monetary policy. And Bitcoin's monetary policy itself is one third attributable to itself and two-third to the dependencies of Bitcoin. So Marx's labor theory
Whoa.
of value is maybe 2%. Austrian economics is 35%. So kind of, so this is kind of like just a detailed graph of like how it would look for open source repos and other things, like, to see it.
Whoa. That's it. I like this funding here. What are the fundings that you're saying? Okay, this surprised me, or this is something that I wish people might know more.
Um, Yeah, something to surprise you. It's that a lot of people talk about doing using AI for capital allocation, but there are actually very,
Hmm.
very few experiments I've seen that have
Oh,
actually distributed money using AI. So I think that this is something
yes,
where there's a lot of potential, but it's kind of still in the potential phase. It hasn't translated to kinetic energy, and
yes,
I would have
makes sense.
expected more of it.
Yeah,
Like now I'm seeing some experiments. So like one is deep funding, which is
yes,
going on. The second is only
yes.
dust, which is a team that works with
Oh,
Starknet and
yes.
Aztec ecosystems and others, and they've given over $1 million using their AI agent to open source contributors. And the third project is the deep gov, which is actually going on right now, where you
Mm,
vote for an AI agent. Like there are three of them. There's the regenerator, the open source capitalist, and the
yes.
Gitcoin communist. And you basically vote for those politicians, those AI politicians, and they distribute
Oh,
$25,000. So those are the three experiments that I know of, if, of using AI to
nice.
distribute capital. But it's a very like wide open space, and I haven't seen as many experiments as I thought I would have seen by now.
Makes sense. Why you think people are like do you think people are not seeing the like how big is the opportunity right now, or you think there is some kind of like blockers in terms of like implementation frameworks? What do you think, like why is that, and what you think like are the
Mhm.
gaps right now on that?
I think the reason is that a lot of the funders have their existing mechanisms and processes. That's one part of
Mm,
it. The
yeah.
second is that we don't have like a feedback loop completed, that is this distribution actually good or
Yes.
not? So kind of I'll tell you the different ways that like people are ensuring accountability. For deep funding, it's very clear that we have human
Hmm.
data. You're on the leaderboard, then you get to distribute money through your AI. If you're not on the leaderboard or you're not scoring a high
Hmm.
position, you don't. With only dust, they treat their AI as more like giving a first draft. So their AI gives a first draft of
Hmm.
like, okay, this contributor gets this much money, that contributor that much. And then
Hmm.
they have an appeals mechanism. So then people can say, hey, the AI is completely wrong. It
Mm.
should have given more money here, less money here. So AI just gives like a first draft, and then the appeals mechanism makes it legitimate. And the third one with like deep gov is basically if you don't like how an AI is distributing money, it's open source, so you can just send a pull
Hmm.
request and say this should be changed and this is how the politician should be made better. So it's kind of like permanent AI politicians who you can send a pull request to make edits and modifications. So I guess like the really important thing to
Uh-huh.
think through when designing these AI based capital allocation is that if your AI is making a wrong judgment, how do you know it's a
Hmm.
wrong judgment and how do you improve from there?
Mm. Okay, okay. It makes sense actually on the feedback loop, right? That's yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, Dev, we're almost on time here. Like, so I'm trying to understand. I think you kind of like also like discuss a little bit the gaps, kind of this kind of wish list where you think builder also should be around the funding use case. I really like also the examples. I even think about. I mean, some also one example that I saw with with the walkie on Allo Capital, also like on the agent kind of like discovery and the automatic funding. But it's definitely something that. We are seeing much more experimentation and really hope like the kind of like the subfield is actually increasing because I think builders need to kind of like start I mean like they're always being a very active and quality contribution, but sometimes those contributions are never really being retributed sometimes, and people feel like okay, we're just doing it for the fun because we are actually caring about the ecosystem, the VM ecosystem. That's why we're doing it, right? But I mean, other things that you want to mention. I see like your deck was like quite big there. Like like anything that you kind of want to mention in terms of like where the funding is going in the future, how we can actually like embrace better like could be Web 2 AI. Deep researcher onboarding around our ecosystem, or even like what are the next exciting development that you're thinking that excites you around could be also like Ethereum roadmap or even deep funding roadmap or agent roadmap. Anything that you want to mention here?
Yeah, I think I'll mention something which Vitalik mentioned in Hong Kong, which is
Hmm.
that transformative technologies have a way of resetting the race. So, um, if you look at like 3 years ago, if you wanted to build a Web3 app, you had to either hire a Solidity developer, of which there are very few good ones, and or you would need to learn it yourself, which takes a lot of time. But something like AI is actually able to reset the entire field so that you can make a Web3 app much easier.
Agree.
So I think this is something in
Yes.
general that I want to start seeing more of, people using AI to vibe code Web3 applications.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so that's maybe one thing that I really want to see, like beyond deep funding, like something I want to see more of. And I also have a question for you,
Yes.
Francisco. Maybe you can talk a little bit about
Mhm.
Mother and how it intersects with some of
Oh,
these
yes.
things that we talked about, like deep funding and vibe coding apps.
Yes. Yeah, that thanks so
Yeah,
much. Actually, it's the first time like people
yeah.
actually ask me a question because I also like super honored by Strong Caliber's joining the live stream. But basically, like the reason kind of like why Mother started to exist was exactly to avoid all the DeFi summer kind of people forking decks, and at the end, let's say the user, the consumer of this tech was the one that got kind of like ragged in some ways, right? And was maybe 1 year ago they actually started to see the same like technology kind of like evolution with people forking agents. And actually even some friends of mine that were actually asking like okay, which agent then should I actually test? And I think like the main use case right now happening and they're still kind of evolving, but obviously on the social side, so could be like interacting with socials, building kind of like social credit scoring, these kind of things, leaderboards included. And then on the DeFi side, but when we are starting to think about agent to agent collaboration, agent frameworks, social coordinations, especially when you think about like DAOs 3 years ago, I thought like, oh, actually, like this specific like agent to agent coordination would be super useful in those use cases right now. Then I thought about, okay, when there is actually like DeFi involved, we need to make sure that agent consumers or just users will try to know which agent and which frameworks are kind of like not the OG, but which are the most used and creating more value for the ecosystem. That's why kind of like I started to think about, okay, let's get together. And let's try to find what the strongest caliber defining this kind of like social attestation and the framework based credential, because we need to start assigning and creating public attestations of contribution and track record of this future agent. Because right now we are interacting, let's say very basic, but when we will start deploying funding, we will start attributing true value to those agents. We need to make sure that those agents are recognized to have a track record and not just forks of fork of forks. And I think like I'm definitely one of the most passionate, let's say, person that recognize that Web3 building this on Web3 rails is extremely important. And the fact that it's fully open source, we are building things in public, you have access to data that around the Web2 economy you cannot actually attribute. And that's why it's super interesting to see the probably the main brain injection capital that this cycle had was actually through AI agent, machine learning engineer coming from Web2 because of the Web3 nature. That's why it's super exciting. That's why kind of like Mother started to exist to be a lower layer to this agent frameworks, builder, launchpad, whatever, but with the clear goal to defend the right for agent consumer or just user in general to know which one is actually like the true agent providing value. And now I'm speaking about individual contributors, but I'm also thinking about lower funnel, like could be organization, could be like contribution leaderboards, trying to really attest the rights to know the right information. And I think in order to do that, you need to build through social reputation mechanism, through attestation layers, but most important, providing the tech stack to agent consumer to actually like submit their agents to submit their track record automatically. And this need to be fully done on an open source and building
Mm.
public layer. That's why it's super exciting. And all the team behind this is extremely strong. And I'm just kind of like one face around it. And the fact that we are building this as kind of like a DAOized organization is also excite me to literally like build this more in
Yeah.
public. So that's kind of like one main. And but I'm definitely excited to see also like the part around deep funding, because attributing funding is one of the most underestimated use case in this ecosystem, because especially like, attributing the funding in the right way. And I think agent working 24/7, attributing the right value is playing a crucial role. And especially because, when we're speaking about retroactive funding, this is cycle based. But with deep funding, we can attribute value to every single attribution, like time, but also like independent to time. You can actually run deep funding 24/7 all the time without specific cycle, and you can actually embed funding organization to specific use case. That's why, for example, this kind of a deactivation, this kind of like things online, I think it's playing a crucial role, because you can always play this all around. So that's super exciting, and that's why
Wow.
I'm kind of like looking forward for
Yeah.
this
No,
more.
I
Yeah.
definitely see like a big use case here that like if you look at these competitions like Kaggle, uh, data science competitions,
Yes.
they
Yes.
usually require upload of a
Yes.
CSV file, which isn't too useful. If I get more
Yes.
questions, I again have to go to the participants and
Yes.
say, can you again
I
upload
agree.
another CSV? Whereas with like the infrastructure that like Mother is building, like people can submit a
Yes.
model and then we get a new question, ask the AI agent, and then it gives an
Yes.
answer immediately. So it's
Yes.
kind of a big
As
upgrade.
and
Yeah.
yeah. Exactly. And also, like, think about Kaggle, for example. Like, I want to basically judge the contribution based on the
Mm.
output. Like, for example, Kaggle is also like the competition are providing a lot of insights for like NGOs and organizations around the world. And if this kind of like organization will use this study, but this is probably, I have a 6 month lag. So that's why you need to attribute funding, and on the competition side, also like, let's say later, but is based on output, is not just based on the communication, the competition output, right? This is why it's very exciting, because if you look at, for example, the VM history right now, and how contributed to building the half of the SDK that we have around the globe, to actually not just connecting wallets but also like building infrastructure, we will attribute like probably like like VM and other frameworks, probably the most impactful framework in our in the industry, right? But it's very difficult to have that without actually have a specific like a framework like
Mm.
the funding based on output instead of just single
Yeah,
contribution. So yeah.
definitely.
No, awesome, awesome. I mean, thanks so much for asking the question and also sharing what you are excited about. One maybe last question. So, what builder should be focusing right now or in the next 6 months?
Right. That's a heavy question.
It's very.
Yeah. Um, yeah, like I guess that's the question of like how does crypto intersect with AI? Is like kind of because so
Mhm,
many builders I've met are also like interested in AI, and one of the ways that
mhm.
I'm seeing is in areas of like governance, that how do we build AI to help with
Yes.
governance. And I think there kind of also what Mother is building is so important, which is differentiating AI agents. So not just having like a
Yes.
faceless agent which kind of doesn't have any differentiation, but agents which actually have some differentiation, like how much voting power do they have, how what is their past decision, or in like prediction market what is their like record or track record there. So I think like figuring out how to make agents differentiated and also have some
Mhm, mhm,
feedback loop where they can learn that, oh, I was wrong, okay, I need to improve this next time. I think that's important.
mhm.
So those are two things,
Yes.
like differentiating AI agents, giving it a track record of when it was right and when it was wrong so it can learn. Those are two broad areas to look at.
Mhm, mhm.
And the third is just
Yes.
kind of getting on how we can make the developer experience on Ethereum big product market.
I think he jumped off, but I just also want to mention something here that it's super relevant here. So basically, like what that was speaking about is this, and I just want to mention also the fact that first, defunding.org is one of the truly resource that actually like I started to see. But welcome back, Dev. I'm just speaking about the specific like website. But one thing that I can actually like really enjoy seeing and everyone to check this out is first the defiling challenge, like the dependency graph here that we discussed at the beginning. That was extremely relevant on the Cosmograph side, and people can just test, experiment, actually check really how is the true and differentiate label and leaky scale. And then there are some other like things that I'm super excited about. But I think like how the defunding work. There are some also like Vitalik like blog posts and the podcast that I actually found super interesting. Any other resources that you wanna share, Dev, before we are kind of like closing up?
No, I think our website has like a lot of the up-to-date information, and you can go to
Yes,
cryptopond.xyz. So cryptopond.xyz is where we are hosting these competitions, and we've already finished two
nice,
of them, and two of them are ongoing. So if you actually want to try your hand and submit a model with like an answer of like deep funding, Sibylness, like that is your place to go and kind of test your skills against the other AI people that are submitting.
nice. This is the
Yep,
one,
that's
right?
right. Yeah.
Nice, nice, nice. And you actually go, where is the
So if
challenges
you go to
specifically
Model
on?
Factory, yeah, yes,
Yes,
and
this is
yep, the
really
first
cool.
four are the
Nice,
ones that we've held. Two are over, and two are going
nice.
on. So yep,
Yes, very cool. I actually looking forward to check this out. Maybe check the submissions and spread this kind of like good use case to
yes,
builders. Awesome. I mean, Devansh, it was a pleasure to meeting you. I think like really enjoy like this great Monday. And yeah, I mean, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much also for listening
yes,
to come kind of like to this post Easter kind of like live stream. I think like deep funding is here to stay. I'm looking forward to also see how the mechanism works and more use case that are like starting to happening. And I think thanks that for also
mm,
driving this industry further. We definitely need more people also like with this passion, right? I think
right,
that's extremely important. And then thanks everybody for watching. I think like we will share some resources. If you're building agents right now, you have kind of like problems, or you want to kind of like ask technically how to kind of like go deeper. Like there is a specific like a developer sub channel in the mother Discord. You can ask questions. If you're building cool stuff, like always shoot me a DM, and the team, we are always kind of super open. Our door is always open. And if you have any question to Devansh, like feel free to check the resources. I will definitely to CryptoPond. I think like I have here the link to check this competition out and also check the resources. Awesome. Thank you so much, and have a great day. And thanks